is, I mean, in the city of Los Angeles, they are not private. They are, um, they're part of the fire department. You call 911, you're gonna get an engine, you're gonna get a rescue ambulance, whatever. But I don't know how their billing or anything works as far as that out there. I don't spend too much time in Los Angeles, to be quite honest.
Well, in the federal court case, County of Erie versus, I actually forget the entity, but this is a federal court case, so I believe it would apply to Los Angeles as well. Now is the time for me to flash the one major law case I ever won. Um, Technically speaking, any fire response, while the ambulances are carved out of it, any fire response and any response that the fire team deems necessary is a public expense.
No.
Which is very, very strange because I know back in New York State, none of the ambulances are public either. They're all also private.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not too familiar like in the like getting into the weeds of all that. That's like super government and I tend to shy away from the government. Um but what I can tell you is what it can tell you is that yes, if you work and you are a taxpayer, your I believe in the state of California, it's your property tax. That is what ultimately funds your local fire department.
Right, which is always how you end up with disparities in fire response between, like, oddly enough, usually the suburbs and like the inner city, where you've got sort of a very robust response time. So like this is how it was back in Buffalo. You had the city of Buffalo Police Department, which was massive, but
Hmm.
also was pretty poorly funded. And then you have the Amherst Police Department, where if you call them about a cat on your roof, 17 cars will respond
Hmm.
because they've got nothing else to do. Um, it's just a fact of those property taxes are that much higher. And obviously, I'm not going to hold you to explaining the vagaries of government emergency response because I think that might be. I don't know that anyone could explain it truthfully unless I actually got the mayor on here, and I think even she might shrug her shoulders at me.
Yeah, probably.
So as we're talking about this, what becomes clear to me is that sort of that there's both a system in place. There's a hierarchy on the site that you have to respect, but at the same time, you can't run every decision up the chain of command.
Right.
So you're trusted at your job to do your job as effectively as possible.
Hmm.
So when you're
Without,
go,
like without error.
without error,
Yeah, without error. So like when you respond to a call, it should run smooth, like as smooth as possible without mistakes. I mean, obviously there are mistakes that are made, things that we overlook or whatever, but um, you know, you have to be very dynamic, if that
right?
makes.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, I think it's very easy for, like you were talking about, the people who walk up to you and say, I pay your bills, you have to do this. I think it's very easy for people to kind of armchair quarterback on the fly medical decisions.
Um, yeah, especially when there's no medical knowledge to back it.
But that's usually when people armchair quarterback. Um,
Yeah.
it's in a much lower stakes situation. We see that in professional sports all the time, where not to pick on the old fat white men, but an old fat white guy is sitting on his couch going like, I could throw that ball a country yard. Why can't he? Well, the fact of the matter is, no, you can't. And,
Yeah, no, you can't. Sorry, Bill.
and the last time you played quarterback, it was 1970, and you were third string.
Yeah.
You were third string. But I'm curious on when you get to a call, because I know nothing about the arrival of an ambulance and the structure of that without getting into the specifics of any particular case. Let's take it in a vacuum so that we don't unearth anything. You get there,
Hmm.
and what, like, you got fire and an ambulance on site.
Hmm.
What's the hierarchy you have to respond to?
Well, so in the county that I am in, um, technically the county policy is that the ambulance they have medical authority. So whoever the paramedic is on the ambulance makes the ultimate judgment call. However, fire does run with paramedics, and sometimes, like the medic on the ambulance will be like, I'll just let the medic run this call and just let the paramedic run it, and then they'll take like a little on-scene report. We'll do a little handoff of the patient, and then we'll get going to the hospital. So it's not like I said, everything's very like dynamic. It really depends on who you work with. I know a lot of like newer or greener medics usually want to have that control, because they're not like familiar with other people, so there's like a lack of trust, if you will.
Mm.
Um, Whereas more senior medics are more than happy to pass off a call to the fire department and let them kind of run the show, and then we just kind of are there for assistance, and then we transport.
But that comes back to that leadership trait that you were talking about, being comfortable and confident in yourself to know what you need to control and what you don't need to control.
Exactly.
Right. So you're 25.
Hmm.
I'm going to say that 90% of 25-year-olds don't know how to spell leadership.
Yeah, this day and age, probably.
So how did that end up sort of instilled in you? Like, how did that, like, did you just
A lot of growth. A lot of growth. I used to be the type of person where like I would really care about other people's opinions of me. And it was like a validation thing. It was like I wanted to be very well liked. And I still to some extent am that way. Like I'm not just gonna be some asshole to you, right? Um, but I think I spent this last year specifically, um, kind of throwing out that idea of you need to be liked and whatever comes with that, and move on to like, no, you're about to be in a position where you need to be a leader. And so I've kind of thrown myself in uncomfortable situations where that's what I'm forced to do. So again, I don't really want to get into the weeds of what this last year has been for me, but um it started off like I would say December of last year into of this year was a really like dark time for me.
well, yeah, the
Things
sun sets early and it's, winter and
Yes, yes, was a time change. Yeah, that's what was really getting to me.
nailed it.
Um, but it was like, oh, things that were supposed to happen did not happen, and friendships that I thought would be lifelong kind of fell through. Um, and it was just this very lonely, dark time. And so the one thing that kind of stayed consistent for me was actually showing up to the gym and working out. Um, but I told myself that if I got the same opportunities that I had last year, I was going to essentially this is not what I want to say. I was going to take the lead, because I'd done it all before, and I felt like if I didn't do that, I would be doing these people that are coming into this process, I would be doing them a disservice by kind of keeping that information to myself and letting anybody fail. So that was kind of my methodology, and it has been very uncomfortable because the situation I'm in, I don't know these people very well. Um, but someone has to do it. So we can ultimately, we all win together, we fail together. It's all teamwork. So um that's kind of it's definitely been like an uncomfortable thing, but I think I'm learning a lot about myself, and learning how to kind of keep a level head. And don't get me wrong, it's very stressful, but I mean, good things are not easy, and if they're easy, they're not worth having. So as much as I would love to just kick back and relax and let somebody else take care of it and take the charge and whatever, I know that this is only making me a better person in the long run.
Right. So what I'm getting, and don't get me wrong, number one, the sun setting early is a real problem for you, and we'll make sure we keep track of that. I'm sorry. I had to make the dad joke again. But also, it's a lot of willingly subjecting yourself to discomfort.
Yeah, like being comfortable, uncomfortable.
Comfortable, uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like getting used to being comfortable while being uncomfortable.
They taught us something at the Marine Officer Candidate School. It was called "Embrace the Suck."
Yes, embrace the suck. That was like the motto when I worked in the Forest Service, was embrace the suck, because that job is by no means easy. I don't care if you're on an hotshot crew, I don't care. But it has really rough moments, and there were a lot of times in those moments where I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Like, what is the purpose, right? But those are also times that, like, now, what is it, 3 years, 2 years later, I like look back really fondly on, and I miss it. Like, the Forest Service by far was probably, it was the hardest job I think I've ever worked this far, but also the most
fun. It was the hardest but most fun.